So I wanted to compare a newish phone from Cricket with an interesting feature. The phone is called the Cricket Outlast, and I wanted to compare it with the Apple iPhone 15. And I'm very surprised by this one feature that caught my attention. This is the only phone that has this feature, and let's go ahead and so I can tell you all about it. So this comparison is comparing two very different devices. We have Cricket Outlast, or the Jetmore as it's called on AT&T. It is a white label phone from Cricket, which is on the low end of the price spectrum. White label meaning that, Cricket, it's its own brand in-house, and it's kind of like a generic, device that Cricket makes a lot of these devices and sells them, as the Cricket brand. And it's being compared to the high-end flagship iPhone 15. Now, price-wise, the Cricket phone, the Outlast, is free when you bring your number, and only $40 if you just start off a service and you get a brand new phone number. And it's pretty much, a free device. iPhone 15 is over $800, and it's not a fair comparison. But let me tell you the big reason why this phone is caught my eye, and that is in the name. It's called the Outlast, and the reason why, it has a 6,000 milliamp battery, which is crazy. I mean, Android phones regularly have 5,000 milliamp batteries, which is plenty more than enough for a day of battery use, a whole day's use of battery. But this one has 6,000 milliamps, so that's crazy. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that this phone destroys every other phone's battery life. 6,000 milliamps is crazy. It's pretty much double the capacity of the iPhone 15, and it's coming from a lower end phone. So I find that super, super interesting. Battery is one of the most important things or features in a smartphone, because everybody has anxiety when their phone is draining and they need to charge and they're out and about. So, this covers one of the biggest pet peeves that people have with their phones. Our phones do a lot these days, but one thing that really makes a difference is the battery life. So if you don't have battery life, your phone is dead. You can't do anything, any of the amazing things that our smartphones do. So this pretty much spits in the face of every Android phone and every iPhone out there. So let's just compare a couple of other features between these devices. And, some of these, the comparisons aren't fair, but a lot of them are very interesting and surprising. So the size-wise, the Cricket Outlast is a pretty big phone, 6.8 inches. So actually, apart from the bigger battery, it has a big screen as well, as opposed to the 6.1 inch on the iPhone 15. The display on those screens, the Cricket Outlast has a lower end 720 display, which 263 ppi versus the iPhone 15's AMOLED display at 461 ppi. But the display refresh rate is actually better on the Cricket Outlast at 90 hertz, which is more than the 60 hertz on the iPhone 15. For perspective, the iPhone 15 Pro, the Pro models are the ones that have super smooth 120 hertz refresh rate. So the Cricket Outlast sits right in the middle nicely with a pretty fast refresh rate on its own. Processor wise, Cricket Outlast has a lower end MediaTek processor. iPhone has best in class A16 Bionic. RAM, you got 4 gigs of RAM on the Cricket Outlast. The iPhone 15 has 6 gigs of RAM, but it's just really it's not a fair comparison. 4 gigs of RAM is on the lower end for Androids, so nothing special there. Storage wise, you get 64 gigs, so not too bad. That's the base level for Android, or any user really. 64 gigs of internal storage. The 15 has 128 gigs. The camera system, obviously, the iPhone 15 is going to be better than the Cricket Outlast. It has a 50 megapixel shooter, but no wide camera shooter. But in general, these are going to take low end to average shots with good light. You got the front camera. You got 8 megapixels on the Cricket phone, 12 megapixels on the iPhone 15. Obviously, just way better camera system on the iPhone 15. The Cricket phone, it's not gonna be a good competition. It's just not that good. The Cricket weighs a little bit more at 7.7 ounces versus the 6 ounces on the iPhone 15. So a little hefty device for the Cricket Outlast, but you have to take in consideration that the bigger battery. So I understand that. For the OS, the Cricket phones, it's white label phones. They have a relatively stock feel of Android. So it's going to feel like the Pixel line or the Motorola phones. iPhone 15 obviously has iOS running the latest version of iOS 17, the latest version of iOS. The Cricket phone has a fingerprint reader, while the iPhone 15 has Face ID. There's no water resistance on the Cricket phone, but you do get it on the iPhone. NFC is a nice little feature that the Cricket Outlast has. So that's usually made for payments, and for a lower end device, this is nice. It's nice to see even cheap lower end phones starting to get NFC. It used to be very rare, and now it's becoming more and more standard. Both of these phones have USB Type C. That's a new feature on the iPhone 15. There's no dual SIM card feature on the Cricket phone. The iPhone 15 has eSIM only, so that actually might be a positive on the Cricket Outlast because it has a physical SIM card slot, and you could swap service very, very easily. And it also has a memory card slot, so you can expand the 64 gigs of the Cricket phone. You can't do that on the iPhone 15. You're pretty much stuck. Another bonus feature on the Cricket Outlast is it has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. iPhone 15 does not have that. And another surprising feature is the Cricket phone has fast charging. So these cheap phones are getting better and better by each phone that they're being released. The iPhone 15, obviously, for that price of $800, better have fast charging on there. So obviously, the better phone is going to be the iPhone 15. It's no competition, but you are paying over $800. But it's very interesting to see that on the lower end of the prepaid scale of prepaid phones and phones in general, is that they're getting better, they're getting cheaper, and there's just some features that they are keeping that are better for people overall, such as the headphone jack, expanding the storage with the SD card slot. The Cricket Outlast, this phone has a big old gigantic screen at 6.8 inches. It has fast charging. It has NFC. It's basically getting to the point where the cheapest Android phone has all the features that you need. And although no Android phone can compete with any iPhone at any price tier, it's just nice to see the basic things are becoming more and more normal and standard that we use every day. So NFC, it's nice to use it for payments. The fast charge, along with the big battery, you don't have to really think about battery life. As opposed to the high-end flagship phones, they have higher-end processors and screens and stuff. They're just draining batteries left and right. Oh, that's another thing about the Cricket Outlast. It has a 90 hertz refresh rate screen. So these cheaper phones are flexing its muscles and giving like less excuses for the flagships to keep those high prices, because these lower end phones are becoming more better overall for everyday people. And it's a shame that I don't see or notice people using all the features and benefits that these phones offer us. So that's, if you're thinking of getting a Android phone and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this phone really sticks out. Not just on the big battery, but it has a lot of these features that are becoming standard that used to be only on higher end devices. So that's a very interesting comparison right there between the Cricket Outlast with its big battery and all these nice features, comparing it to the $800 flagship iPhone 15.